Hi, friends. My name is Matt. I'm the youth and family pastor of Cornerstone Church in Marshfield, here today with your Cornerstone Connection, a daily devotional. Well, as we get into the book of Psalms today, we're going to be in Psalm 107. What we're going to see there is we're going to see a pattern that occurs about 4 different times throughout the psalm. And we might not look at that pattern all 4 times because it really just repeats itself. But it really shows us something awesome about our God, and also hopefully something instructive about ourselves. And patterns are something that we've seen our entire lives. Since we were little kids in kindergarten and we're trying to identify patterns, to as adults, a lot of times we see patterns in our own lives and the lives of other people, and sometimes those patterns are healthy, sometimes they're unhealthy, sometimes they have really positive results, sometimes they've got very negative consequences, right? And so we see patterns all the time. Well, it's no different as we jump into Psalm 107, as the psalmist is giving us really 4 different pictures that show the same pattern, just in different ways. Okay, so let's start in Psalm 107, verse 4, and let's see if we can kind of start to identify the pattern that we're seeing here. Psalm 107, verse 4 starts like this. Some people wandered in desert wastelands, finding no way to a city where they could settle. They were hungry and they were thirsty, and their lives ebbed away. This is a negative situation, right? But then, here's the next part of the pattern. Then they cried out to the Lord in their trouble, and He delivered them from their distress. So they're in a tough predicament. They cry out to the Lord, and what does He do? He delivers them in their distress. He led them by a straight way to a city where they could settle. And then it says, verse 8, let them give thanks to the Lord for His unfailing love. Other versions of the Bible say steadfast love, and for His wonderful deeds for men, for He satisfies the thirsty and He fills the hungry with good things. So we had negative situation. The people cry out to the Lord delivers them, and then the psalmist says, let them give thanks for His unfailing, His steadfast love. Well, let's see another one of these. Let's go to verse 10. The psalmist continues, some sat in darkness and the deepest gloom, prisoners suffering in iron chains, for they had rebelled against the words of God. So they're in a negative situation, right? They're in darkness. They're in the deepest gloom. They're prisoners. They're depressed, right? They're alone. Why? Because they had rebelled against God. They got themselves there, right? But then, check it out. And it says in verse 11, for they had rebelled against the words of their God and despised the counsel of the Most High. So He subjected them. There's discipline involved. He subjected them to bitter labor. They stumbled and there was no one to help. And then verse 13, here comes that part of the pattern. Then they cried to the Lord in their trouble, and He saved them from their distress. He brought them out of darkness and the deepest gloom and broke away their chains. Again, verse 15, let them give thanks to the Lord for His unfailing love and His wonderful deeds for men. For He breaks down gates of bronze and cuts through bars of iron. Do you see it again? We have a negative situation. There's negative consequences that come with that negative behavior, including discipline from the Lord. What do? They cry out to God. And what does He do? He delivers them, right? Why? Because of His unfailing, His steadfast love. Let's just look at one more. Go to verse 17. Some became fools through their rebellious ways and suffered affliction because of their iniquities. They loathed all food and drew near the gates of death. So again, foolish living, rebellious living leads to negative circumstances. Verse 19. Then they cried out to the Lord in their trouble, and He saved them from their distress. He sent forth His word and healed them. He rescued them from the grave. Let them give thanks to the Lord for His unfailing love and His wonderful deeds for men. Let them sacrifice thank offerings and tell of His works with songs of joy. Same pattern, different circumstances, different consequences, but that same unfailing and steadfast love of God. And so, friends, here's what I want to bring us to as we close out our time in the Cornerstone Connection today. Unfortunately, we're sinful human beings, and unfortunately we make mistakes, and unfortunately we are foolish at times, and we rebel against God, and that rebellion leads to really negative consequences. And at the same time as that's unfortunate, there's a very fortunate part, that we have a God who welcomes us to cry out to Him. We have a God who, when we cry out to Him, is willing and gracious and merciful to deliver us, not because of our good works, but because of his unfailing and his steadfast love. It's always what comes next in the pattern when we come back to him. Praise God for that and tell people about that amazing steadfast love, about that amazing mercy that we are gifted by our God. Have a great day, friends. We'll see you next time on the Cornerstone Connection.